Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Tolgai Kizilelma. He's Information Security Officer, Argyle Advisory Board member. We are excited to have Tolgai and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Powering Innovation, Leveraging the Latest Trend-Setting Technologies. Welcome, Tolgai. Over to you.
Thank you, Nick. We have a great list of panelists, and I'm honored to be moderating this panel. Thank you. So my name is Tolgai. I'm the ISO and have been a long time member of Argyle Advisory Board member. So with that, let's start. Heather, would you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tolgai, and hope everyone's having a good day thus far. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to join Chris and Jeff in the discussion and really thank everyone for being part of today. So I'm Heather Whitlock. I'm Director of Strategic Development at Adobe, focused on digital document productivity. It's a gorgeous day here in the Washington, D.C. area. A little background on Adobe. Hopefully most of you are familiar, but just to kind of set context, our mission really is to change the world through digital experiences. And so we do that via our creative document and experience solutions. And so excited to kind of bring that to the forefront of the conversation. Passionate about the work that we do and how we're developing solutions to help organizations. And I'm excited about the opportunity to learn and collaborate today. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Heather. As Jeff is going to confirm, we have a very sunny day out here in sunny California. Jeff, back to you.
Thank you, Heather and Tolgai. Jeff Wada. I'm the Chief Health Information Officer for one of the University of California health systems, the health system that is in the Sacramento area called UC Davis. And it's an operational position where our team helps facilitate the efficiency and effectiveness of operations throughout the organization, mostly in the health system. Also, artificial intelligence and machine learning researcher, and have a team dedicated to education as well as operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Chris?
Hello, my name is Chris Murphy. I'm Chief Technology Officer for Black & Veatch. It's a privilege to be on a panel with you, Heather, with you, Jeff, and Tolgai, with you. You're presiding over it. At Black & Veatch, I have software development teams that work with our engineering teams. I have an enterprise architecture team as well as an innovation team. But who is Black & Veatch and what does Black & Veatch does? What do they do? Sorry. What we do, we work with critical human infrastructure. What's that? The next time that you're going home or in your apartment and you flip on a light switch, more than likely a company like Black & Veatch created the power plant that your utility company is operating for you. When you turn on your water, chances are a company like Black & Veatch, if not Black & Veatch, work with the municipality to create the wastewater treatment facility. Or when you're doing a phone call, we work with doing the 5G networks on behalf of some of the communication providers. And so I have the privilege of innovating for this company, as well as making sure that we're best set for the future as well. Back to you, Tolgai.
Great, thank you, Chris. So let's start with our questions. We have a good set of questions. So the first one is, with all the latest, hype around ChatGPT, the technology trends, the question is, how are AI, automation, bots, and other trending technologies changing the IT and the business landscape? What is the impact? Heather, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a really good question, Tolga, and I know one that's weighing really on all of our minds these days. We sort of can't escape, leveraging and thinking about technology and what it means. So I'd say there's no doubt that AI is changing the workplace, right? There doesn't seem to be a shortage of ideas and opportunities for it across organizations. It's disrupting our world, right, and our business. It's impacting the way we're thinking, we're working, we're collaborating. And I would say that we're leaning into AI really to collaborate, right, in smarter, faster ways for a couple reasons, right? How do we help support employee productivity? And then also, how can we use that to provide a framework to enhance experiences, right, of all of our stakeholders that we work with every day? So I was going to give two examples, but before I dive into that, I just wanted to share a little bit of framework that we are using at Adobe just to provide some real life examples on ways that we're using it to guide our interactions with AI. And the first is around something called Content Authenticity Initiative. It's better known as CAI. And it's really something where we've been working very closely to kind of set that industry standard around responsible AI and what that looks like. So CAI has over 900 members, right? It's really leading the conversation around that digital content attribution. And it works very closely on the technical standards, working with a nonprofit. It's called Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. It's a long word, so it's sort of better known as the C2PA initiative. And that's really in partnership with leading organizations, right? Launching a coalition, if you will, around standards development and taking this mutually governed consortium, right, to accelerate the pursuit of, digital provenance, essentially. So I think just kind of setting that stage around two of the frameworks is important to kind of set the stage around, again, how can technology, impact it? The first is around document authenticity and automation. And I think that probably resonates with many of you who know maybe Adobe as a leader in the PDF space. But if we look at PDFs, there's a lot of opportunities to explore how we can make better use of all of the data that's within them, right? How can we reduce the amount of time reading and working with files while keeping security at the forefront is really important. And I know I can't be the only one out there that has opened like a 50-page or 100-page document and thought, how in the world am I going to go through all of this, right? So how do we take AI and take long documents and summarize them? How can we leverage AI to provide the ability to ask questions, right, of a PDF document, or use it to take that content, reformat it, et cetera. So those are some examples as I think about some of like the document pieces and document automation and intelligence, I think is going to be a really big part of that. How do we help organizations build new document solutions and then integrate them with the existing technologies around them? I think that's a key area for how it's influencing from like a document perspective. And then the second quick example is all around generative AI, which is, I know, a big topic for today. How do we leverage generative AI for like the creative needs and the use cases and the workflows around that? And when I think about kind of our commitment on the Gen AI space, right, making sure that we're doing it responsibly according to, the ethics, making sure that we're accountable, responsible, transparent, that's really the foundation. So I would say in closing, the three areas that we are staying really true and authentic in this space is around designing that generative AI to be commercially safe, right, and ethically sourced so you can feel really good about using it. And then making sure it can be available, like in the tools that we use every day. And then lastly, right, for enterprises, for us that serve in the organizations that we do, making it enterprise friendly so you can, go fast and leverage control and how you go about using that AI. So hopefully those two examples make sense in some of that context.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you. I appreciate it. Chris, what do you think?
That's, I think, great groundwork that Heather laid out. I will take it from a slightly different perspective, looking at, not in contrast to what Heather said, by the way, looking at how today we have we're scarcity when it comes to data scientists. And as we look at that, then we realize that, hey, a lot of companies are trying to look at deep insights and to get that for competitive purposes. Companies are, when it comes to AI, companies are looking at every nook and cranny to see how they can leverage AI to change their future. I would say there are three observations that I have. One, leading edge companies, the way this is changing the landscape, leading edge companies are leveraging AI to streamline low margin work that doesn't add a lot of value to the bottom line. Leading edge companies are adjusting their risk appetites so that they can do experimentation. So it goes back to that deep insights. And this comes in all shapes of form. In our industry, we're looking at things like automated pile drivers, so that as we're building these solar fields, because there are a ton of them that need to be built so that we can meet the sustainability need. How can we do this faster and compress the amount of time that it takes for an area to convert from less environmentally friendly energy sources to greener sources? The third I would say is that leading edge companies are going to their IT organizations to say, hey, we've got some issues. We need you to help us do our business better so that we can create some competitive advantage. We need for you to look at trends. For example, this session right now. How can we leverage this so that we can do work better, faster, cheaper? How can we leverage technology to reimagine the way that we're servicing our customers in a way that our competitors are not? So that's what I would say about that.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. Essentially, we could have this whole panel, ChatGPT do it, right? Ask the questions, come up with top 5 questions, and then answer those questions, kind of. But anyway, Jeff, how about you? Any input?
Yeah, thank you, tall guy. There's a couple engineering ideas that come to mind here. First of all, sometimes the second mouse gets the cheese, and we have decades where not much happens, and then we have months where it seems like a decade of progress happens. I would prefer to not think of this in terms of ChatGPT as much as I think of it in terms of large language models, and what are large language models going to mean to all of us. And I know a little later on we're going to talk about challenges, but to Chris's point and Heather's point, when I listen to them speak about how to move forward and how to be successful, how to leverage, if you will, large language models, it really comes down to the quality of your data. More important than ever is really having clean, available data. And this continues to be a problem in every industry. And to the degree that we pay attention to that on the front end, we don't need to be on the tip of the spear as far as implementing every available application or functionality that might be available as a result of this evolution in large language models. If we listen to our customers, in my case, it's not just our patients, it's our payers, it's our employees, it's the people we have partnerships with. They'll tell us where their pain points are. And there are things that are readily available that should make a significant difference in our ability to increase earnings per share on a quarterly basis if we're a publicly traded company, or whatever is necessary in order to grow the company. But I think more than ever, a focus on data quality is going to be important.
Great, thank you. Well, we provided some examples, but just do you have any one or two maybe just innovative ways companies are using? Just a quick example. I know in healthcare there's some. Jeff, do you have any examples just that they can briefly mention?
Yes, we're at a point with chatbots linked to deep links. Like you often see in your banking software or your brokerage software where there are deep links present. We're now communicating with patients through deep links and through chatbots where up to the minute appointment availability is communicated out to patients. the ability to pay bills online and to apply immediately for payment plans, the ability to do campaigns, advertising and marketing. We spend a lot of time in the University of California system creating healthcare opportunities or care that's not available outside of academic medicine. And so how are people aware of a trial? How are people aware of the latest thing to treat a new diagnosis? These are areas that we have practical applications to large language models that we are implementing or have implemented in the University of California Health Systems.
Great, thank you. Chris, Heather, do you have any, just an example how it's being used in innovative ways?
So for us personally, we're encouraging members of our company to experiment. We are not using it yet in a production capacity, but I think everyone can imagine the opportunities are very varied. For us, things that span industry, we're considering things such as leveraging it from a proposal perspective, because each customer is different and it can help streamline that process. We're looking at it from a perspective of marketing. In the utility industry, in the energy industry, there are a lot of conversations that are actually based on trust. So we have to weigh how we would use that to do some communications. As a result, we recognize that not all of our project managers, people who are on site running these mega projects, not all of them are versed in some of the solutions that we have available for our clients. So we're evaluating how can we make sure that we enable them through search.
Yeah.
So conversational search opportunities. Those are just a couple of things that
Great.
we're evaluating that I can talk about.
You're right. And actually back to your low margin comment, it's all about, creating efficiencies, right? The value add, the non-value add, right? With limited resources. There's a question from audience. How far in front of or behind should a company be best positioned? And this is more about the adoption model, right? Should we be the, up front there, early adopters, or what do you think? How far should they be, up or, after in terms of how they adopt the latest technologies?
Is that for me? Okay. Or
anyone who wants to take on this?
I'll give just a brief one, and it's the it depends answer. It largely depends on the risk tolerance for the company, and it depends on the industry. If it's a consumer goods company, then chances are they have a little bit more flexibility to incorporate it sooner than later. If it's a compliance-driven industry, there's a little bit more rigor that they need. They probably want to be closely following as opposed to leading in general.
Great.
Yeah. Tolga, can I just add to that? Chris, I could not agree with more with it depends, right? It really is kind of depends on what you're doing from a business perspective. But in addition to that, I think it's also one of those areas where you don't necessarily want to be too far behind, because again, those organizations are going to stand out in terms of creating, right, these experiences that attract stakeholders, customers, constituents, et cetera, right? Those are the folks that are going to lead in the space, right? So when we think about it, certainly in like a competitive environment, right? Being closer to the forefront and being able to differentiate yourselves and figuring out how it's going to, ultimately support how you're serving your customers, I think is really, really important. So I personally wouldn't want to be too far behind, but definitely lean in, right? Because I think we can all say like AI and all of these really emerging technologies are here, they're going to continue. So let's embrace how we can take advantage of them.
Yeah, definitely. So you don't want to, behind your competitors, that's for sure, in the value creation chain. So let's move forward. We have more questions and, a lot of good topics. So next question, what are the key challenges, AI challenges related to data, security, analytics, and how can IT leaders, or businesses can overcome these challenges? Chris, can I start with you?
Certainly. We'll start with me, but I'm going to effectively repeat some of the things that Jeff has already said. Data, 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 data. Statistically, if I'm recalling this off the cuff correctly, about 75% of most AI projects are spent making sure that they can get clean data so that they can do what they're supposed to do. So that doesn't really leave a lot of time and effort to actually deliver results. And that's why many AI projects fail. So what's the challenge? It's sourcing good data that you can trust. And so this goes to the brilliant basics that most CIOs need to make sure that they're doing. And that's making sure you've got good identification of your systems of record, one source of truth. Make sure you've got data stewards who are making sure that the data is trusted from throughout its life cycle, from beginning to end. Making sure data stewards also are empowered to assure the integrity of that data wherever it is in the organization. That means consolidation and alignment, and also making sure that there aren't multiple processes that do the same thing.
Great, thank you. You're right. I mean, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you want to make sure we have the right data. Jeff, what about you? You provided some comments, and if you want to expand on those.
Yes, thank you, Chris and Tolgai. I'm thinking about a way to answer this concisely. It's a big question. Chris is right. You can't focus on data enough. You can't focus enough on understanding your customers' needs and the appropriate use cases. Do you have the skill sets within your company to understand all this, or do you lack the appropriate skill sets? Do you understand how security and your network and your interfaces work through all this? And do you understand the essential nature of the human at the center of this? And bias is one word that I haven't heard described yet, but we've looked at thousands of commercially available AI models, and also these are not only commercially available, but AI models that we've created at the University of California, and we are yet to find a model that is without bias. So this comes down to the need of your work staff to have the appropriate skill sets. Do you have someone who can talk freely in your organization about this? Do you understand what supervised machine learning is, unsupervised, and do you understand what reinforcement learning is? Do you understand how this is related to what we've done with regression analysis throughout the years, but this is a greater application of math? Heavy answer, but at least be thinking about these things.
Great, thank you. Heather, actually, there's a question about the challenge, kind of, the best practice to balance the AI ChatGPT and human intelligence to move forward with a balanced approach, right? There's pros, cons, and how do you find that, balance? That's also definitely a challenge, I think, right? What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I mean, Jeff and Chris, you summarized it so well around the data and then the bias piece, right? So I think the challenges we kind of highlighted, right, are the data quality and availability. And the second one is all around like regulatory and ethical concerns around that. And so balancing them, right, is paramount. And I would say, right, we kind of hit upon it, right? We as humans, right, have bias, right? So of course, in our technology and how we work, there's sort of inherent bias around us. And so when we think about that, we have to kind of, again, identify, right, maybe what those biases are, and then work towards, right, trying to reduce them as much as possible. But again, it's really around keeping at the forefront. What are we doing all this for, right? It's not really about the technology. It's about how do we create experiences for people, and it's all about people. And that's what we need to stay focused on. How do we do this in a responsible way that we keep people at the forefront? There's also a question too around ChatGPT, and of course, right, there's bias that we've seen in how some of the content comes back or how it's consumed. So we really have to, again, raise the bar on the standards and how we're engaging in that process, right? And I think we have to do that together. This isn't one organization figuring it out, right? This is going to take all of us coming together to figure out the right ways. But you mentioned best practice, Tolga. I mean, one of the things that really resonated with me, like something very practical, is around when I think about the industry, is really making sure we have trust in documents and trust in the content that we are consuming every single day. And if I just look at like an example this week, there was something that kind of hit the news around like AI generated images kind of near the Washington, D.C. area of a potential explosion that happened. And indeed, it was fake, right? But what's the ripple effect when we see content like that happen? What does it do to our local stock market right here in the United States, or the global markets, et cetera? Like all of this, content that we can't trust is really causing a lot of disruption, right? And that's one of the challenges. So I think a practical way to overcome that is, when I think about content, it's how do we use content credentials, right, that give us a way to look at the data in such a way, right? So how do we take open source technology that lets everyone attach like metadata along the way to images or to content to show like where that image was created, when was it created, who was it created by, and then that essentially kind of goes with that content along the way. So then you as a consumer can judge based on the, based essentially on the metadata around, again, what you want to trust and maybe what may not be truthful out there. So just a couple examples there.
Great. Thank you. That was really great answer. So let's move forward. The next question we have, what are the most important IT business leadership considerations for the use of ChatGPT and other bot technologies? And there's a question about this too, and I want to kind of integrate it to this question. Are there good thought leadership and policy development around risk, ethics, etc., for the AI use, right? The use of technology, particularly in terms of copyright and intellectual property? Jeff, why don't we start with that? I know in higher ed, this might be an issue, right?
Yes. Obviously I won't name vendors, but we're large. We have 5 health systems spread throughout the state of California, and we work with very well-known vendors. And the issue of who owns the data and intellectual property comes up all the time. Give an example. You can work with a pharmaceutical firm that will take a blood sample from 100% of your patients and run the genome, the full human genome, for free to 100% of the patients. Well, what is the requirement around, the privacy, the consent, who owns the data, how do you use the data, how does pharma use the data, and how does the University of California use the data in that situation? So this idea of good thought leadership around this and good policy development around this. There's a few things, they're really hard to read because a lot of what is written about this is in the Federal Register coming out of Congress right now. But one legislation to be aware of is the 21st Century Cures Act, the 21st Century Cures Act. And why it's important is it avoids data blocking. In other words, every piece of information that's available in healthcare has to be shared with a patient. Images, diagnoses, physician notes, everything. And there are very large penalties, 7-figure penalties associated with data blocking and not sharing. Then there's a public government construct working together here in California called Sequoia. And Sequoia is all about interoperability and data sharing. And these, constructs are looking at best practices. They're looking at policy development around the risks and ethics and use and boundaries. of, of how you share things. I think Heather said something really valuable, which is we're early and we're all learning about this together. And, we have to be careful of the glossy brochure now as things are moving so rapidly. For you that understand software development, think about Linux and how Linux became open source and people didn't make a lot of commercial products out of it, right? Well, there's an analogy here with what's happening with large language models where it's moving so quickly that maybe it's going to be more open source and maybe there will be a lot of tools for us to decide how it's used. It's still too early to say, but there are organizations working on this that are a lot smarter than I am. Although part of my job every week, I'm on the phone with our compliance and legal people, both at the University of California Office of the President in Oakland and at our local campus. And we're trying to figure out how to do this while we're focused on good, clean data that enables the better ethical use of AI and helps reduce the bias. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Chris, what do you think about these, IT business leadership considerations?
I would say that there are three considerations that I would propose, at least three. The first I would talk about from an execution at speed perspective. As IT leaders, one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure that we're looking at how we balance the brilliant basics with emergencies that are always occurring, with our key initiatives, and with our need to make sure that we're doing the things necessary to grow the business. When we look at this grow the business segment, and we look at ChatGPT and other bot technologies, there's the spectrum of how leaders are viewing it. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty around it and I just want to say this to set what I'm going to suggest. It's anywhere from, hey, this is a black box and this is something that could lead to the next apocalypse. On the other hand, are people who feel, hey, look, you got to crack a few eggs if you want to make an omelet. And what we're suggesting is we need to acknowledge that there is a challenge with a black box when it comes to machine learning technologies. There are compliance movements globally that suggest that AI transparency is something that will be sought. In other words, companies will need to be able to document from an audit perspective how decisions were made. So interpretable AI. We're recommending we need to acknowledge the risk and intentionally go about our experimentation, understanding from an AI ethics perspective that there could be implications to what we're doing. And so that's one consideration for leaders. We do need to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility to move the company forward. We shouldn't do it blindly. We should do it intentionally. So proceed. And that's the second piece. We need to experiment. We also need to experiment without compromising company assets. So be careful where you're engaging your ChatGPT learnings. There recently, Samsung had confidential information exposed. We all need to be aware that there are dangers to do this. So make sure that you're doing it in a secure environment that you can control. And the third thing is, as you mentioned, Tall Guy, garbage in, garbage out. There are some things that you can put through ChatGPT. It doesn't understand how to validate sources, as Heather has been alluding to along the way. We need to make sure that the data in is data that we control organizationally or that we've validated. So that goes back to a best practice. And there was a best practice question there around what's called today human in the loop. AI learns from humans, humans learn from AI. When it comes to ChatGPT currently, I'd recommend that leaders consider making sure that there's a human in the loop to make sure the output is representative of your company values and intent.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Heather, what do you think about the considerations?
Yeah, these are all really good ideas. I mean, that Jeff and Chris just alluded to. I mean, a couple, in addition, maybe just to echo a couple that have been shared. I would say one of the key considerations, best practices, if you will, is around, for any organization that is diving into AI, which I am sure is everybody here during this discussion. I would say it's imperative to start out with an AI ethics framework, steering committee of sorts, if you will. Right, have a set of concise and actionable ethics principles and a formal review process, that's built on your organization's DNA, right? That's going to guide this journey along the way. I think that's paramount. And, Chris, you alluded to the kind of the training and the testing, right? So you got to train, test, adapt. And the human in the loop, I couldn't agree more with you, Chris, around the human oversight piece. There are likely going to be many steps of the process where it's important that human intervention is part of the process, right? So let's embrace that and figure out where it makes sense. So, this AI ethics framework steering committee, right? It's got to include everybody at the table. That includes, representation from the business, technology, security, the whole gamut, right? Because everyone's got to be part of this conversation and making sure that we're accounting for and taking in all of the potential considerations, right? As you evolve that within your organization. A few other practical ones that kind of came to mind that I would always encourage folks to do is to think about engaging a partner, right, to help you get up to speed. Jeff, you alluded to, we may not all have the skill sets in our organizations to do that. So if you don't, seek a partner that can help you with all that regulatory, ethical, security components to think about. Because they'll help you be able to develop that internal guidance that you're going to need on that AI journey that you're going through. And then last, of course, is the data piece, right? Look at your data governance, your processes, conduct assessments to figure out where you may have some areas that you need to lean in on. But it doesn't always have to be like this scary thing in terms of like data and essentially kind of where you are. Use it as a way to launch and dive into it and figure out where do you have good data, where do you start, and then where are areas that you might be able to do better and get better, and then look to those areas to deploy later. So hopefully those are a couple good examples just to kind of give folks some ideas.
Yeah, well, thank you, Heather. Thank you, Chris. Actually, you kind of repeating the garbage in, garbage out. My comment there just reminded me about the considerations, right? We also have to find that you all mentioned about the skill set. We have currently a workforce shortage, right? People with the right skill set, and that skill set now we have this new label is called prompters, right? To be able to enter and ask the right question in the right way so that you get not the garbage, right? So you get the value out of it. So there's that category of prompters that we start seeing on LinkedIn as a job function, job category. Okay, there's a question. How do you convince the CFO for these newer technologies where CFOs seem to be more conservative, right? Because technology has too much risk for them in terms of how we create value and the risk and balance. How do you convince how we spend money?
Yeah, one thing briefly we do is we're required to have proof points. And then we create the technology, and then we don't force people to use it. But we incentivize them and de-incentivize them if they don't. And we found that that works well. But we're required to have proof points before anything can go into production, and use sort of classic change management and engineering principles in order to show the value.
Great, thank you. So there are a couple of questions. I think about again, kind of tying it back to the considerations. What do you think about the AI applications on privacy, like the concerns? How do you want to comment on that? Chris?
I would say that most companies that are not international in nature probably don't think a lot about privacy. And because of that, there's a lot of data lying around that they've collected that they're not using. I think the principles of regulations such as GDPR and California's Privacy Act, these are things that need to start resonating with a lot of companies, in that companies as a whole need to make sure that they only have the data necessary that they have to use and are actively using in order to conduct their business. One of the attack vectors for hackers is in data that's not used. It's in archives and things of that nature. So I think one aspect of privacy implications and what we need to do to address it is make sure you as a company only have the data you absolutely have to do your business. The second thing, as I think everyone here has been rallying around, is this notion of an AI ethics committee. NIST has a standard related to that. So if you haven't taken a look at it, you should, because it helps you understand the sort of protections, security posture you need to put in place in order to do the work that you're doing with AI. The second, or the third, I would say, is partner with your information security team.
Great.
Partner,
Thank you. Well, this is a great topic, and a lot of, we need more time, obviously. So for the last question, in a very concise couple of sentences, Heather, starting with you, Jeff, then you, and Christopher, what do you think is the next trend that you think will have the greatest effect on technology innovation? I mean, when you think about the bigger scheme of everything we discussed, just a couple of sentences.
Yeah, it's an ongoing journey where I think we're just scratching the surface. I'm most excited about kind of content, document automation, and intelligence, right? How we can do that to make our lives easier, how we can synthesize information better, how we can then leverage that information, that data, if you will, that we've talked about, to improve, the way we work, the way we communicate and interact. So those are just a couple of quick areas in terms of next trends, but I would say, it's an ever evolving landscape, and as it continues to evolve, it's going to bring new challenges, and it's imperative that industry, government, community, we all work together to solve them. So,
great, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Part of this is hope as a educator and as a leader, that this is going to produce widespread enthusiasm for emerging technology. And, this will lead to, what engineering firm leaders like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates have been talking about for decades, this idea of making STEM, making science, making math available and fun and applicable for kids at a younger age. So this leads to filling that gap that we currently have.
Thank you, Jeff. Chris, any last words, Chris, about this trends?
I would say this is probably the hardest question for me, because there's so many, Tall Guy, but I will say privacy-driven AI ethics.
Great.
Because I think privacy needs to be at the forefront in order to make sure that as a whole, people are able to trust. Gartner had in 2021, they said that by 2025, there will be regulations regarded to AI ethics in order to promote transparency and privacy. And I think that's something that is starting to come into fruition today.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. I really want to thank all of you. Obviously, this is really a topic we need more than 45 minutes, maybe half a day at least, to go into all the details. But again, thank you. Very thoughtful, valuable insights. I really appreciate it. I think what I like to say is, when we're kind of thinking long term and going forward, think about the ethical side, the privacy. It's all about value creation, right? How we deliver value, how we create value, the benefits realization, and how we optimize the associated risk and how we optimize the use of resources. So those are kind of things that we need to keep in mind. And again, I think we need more time to kind of discuss all the details. Anyway, this was a really great discussion. I really appreciate it. Nick, back to you.
Great. This was a great discussion. And thank you, Tall Guy, Jeff, Heather, and Chris. This was amazing. And I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Have a great day, everyone.